Breaking tonight, confusion and contradiction coming from Washington, with the White House sharing some mixed messages about the world's most brutal terror group and the threat to America. Welcome to the Kelly File, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. It has been almost a week since the world watched in horror as the terror army known as ISIS beheaded an American journalist in a message to the United States. Suddenly, the administration was forced to come up with new answers about what to do with the group the president described as junior varsity just 8 months ago. At first, the administration seemed measured, wanting to stay the course. But by last Thursday, the message had become much more dire.
This is beyond anything that we've seen, so we must prepare for everything. And the only way you do that is you take a cold, steely, hard look at it and get ready.
Well, the immediacy is in the number of Europeans and other nationalities who have come to the region to become part of that ideology, and those folks can go home at some point. It's because of open borders and immigration issues. It's an immediate threat. Beyond
anything, prepare for everything. It is an immediate threat. That message is pretty clear. So why then did the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the man you just heard, second there, yesterday appear to walk that back, saying off camera, ISIS is more of a regional threat and is not currently planning any attacks on the United States or Europe? Our own Ed Henry just filed this report.
Megyn, after a vacation that featured 9 rounds of golf, President Obama's aides today tried a mulligan, or a do-over, about the commander-in-chief's original comments to the New Yorker magazine back in January, in which he claimed that terrorists like ISIS were merely the JV squad. White House spokesman Josh Earnest today insisting the president was not singling out ISIS in those comments, that he was merely opining about different threats posed by various extremists. Meanwhile, the White House appears to be tweaking what General Martin Dempsey said last Thursday when he and Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel issued dire warnings about ISIS. You'll remember, Dempsey said the only way to actually defeat ISIS was to go into Syria with the U.S. military. Dempsey now clarifying that ISIS is just a regional threat and he's not sure about U.S. military action. Officials deny that Dempsey was pressured, though they are vague on whether they agree with what he originally said about Syria military action. Listen.
He suggested we have to go into Syria if we're going to defeat ISIS. Does the president agree with that assessment?
Again, what I would go back to is the president's stated strategy for dealing with ISIL, which is to remember that there are more tools in the toolbox than just brute military force.
He's saying you have to go into Syria to defeat them. Does the president agree with that?
Again, what I think that he was saying is that there are a range of ways for us to confront this threat, that we need to confront this threat in a sustainable way. It can't just be through brute U.S. military force.
Now, Republican Lindsey Graham charged today that the administration is pressuring military leaders to pull back from going after ISIS full throttle, in part because the administration doesn't want to admit it's had a failed strategy in dealing with ISIS. The president's aides obviously reject that notion, though they have been all over the map on ISIS, originally suggesting they were the JV squad, last week suggesting actually ISIS was even worse than al-Qaeda pre-9/11. Now they're saying they're not quite sure about the threat. Megyn?
Ed Henry, thank you. So what's going on here? Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters is a Fox News strategic analyst, and he thinks he knows. Ralph, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs is not supposed to be messing with the information in order to assuage political concerns. So what do you believe is the likelihood that somebody took General Dempsey out behind the woodshed over the weekend and said, what are you saying the threat is imminent for?
Well, they unquestionably took him out behind the woodshed and for an extended period. But let's face it, Megyn, he deserved it. Because General Dempsey committed the greatest sin you can commit in the Obama administration last week. He told the truth. He told the truth that ISIS is a growing threat, that it's a threat to the United States, that the border no longer exists between Syria and Iraq, that you can't defeat the Islamic State without going into Syria, that we have to be worried about the thousands of Westerners who have flocked to them. And that just doesn't go with them being a JV team or with the administration's narrative. And if General Dempsey and Secretary Hagel were right, Obama would have to do something. So with a wave of the president's magic golf club, suddenly we're back to where, well, it's not an immediate threat. It's not a threat to the U.S. Megan, all flippancy aside, this reminds me of when I was in the Pentagon in the late Clinton years. And, you know, they didn't use the same words, but basically the Clinton administration insisted that al-Qaeda could never really attack the United States because they were JV.
They seem all over the board on this, Ralph. I mean, I can't keep up with the changing stories about ISIS. And you know, the JV comment is just, it's very problematic for this administration. It's not like that was 3 years ago. That was in January when the black flag of ISIS was flying over Fallujah, and they said that. And so the question is whether you think President Obama is disengaged, is he unprepared, is he disillusioned right now, as some suggest?
Well, I think he's sulking. I mean, he's just not going to clean his room. And you can't make him clean up his room. I mean, he's like a child. And it's really alarming because he needs to get out of his snit and do something because, well, to be fair to Obama, and I want to be fair to him, I think it really hurt him badly, Megan, that he got so much adulation early on, that he got that ridiculously, wildly premature Nobel Prize before he'd done anything. And he expected, I think he sincerely expected, that his personal charm would work on the whole world, including Islamist terrorists, that if he just put our military on ice and said some nice things about Islam, that the terrorist threat would go away. This man came to office with the worst level of naivety about the way the world really works.
It wasn't just President Obama who felt that way, though, Ralph. It was a lot of folks who voted for him and were war-weary and thought if we took a different approach, maybe we would get a different result.
Well, yeah, and I think, you know, the American media were so resolutely anti-Bush that no matter what Bush did, it was going to be wrong. Now, the Bush administration made countless mistakes, and I criticized them when they did. But let's make no mistake. You know, if Bill Clinton had deposed Saddam Hussein, the left would have celebrated him as the greatest liberator since Abraham Lincoln. The problem wasn't so much what Bush did, but but who did it? That was Bush.
Let me ask you this question, too.
Sure.
There's a report coming out in tomorrow's New York Times that two of our allies, our supposed allies in the Middle East, Egypt and the UAE, have teamed up to bomb Libya without keeping us in the loop. And here's a quote from the article. Twice in the last 7 days, Egypt and the UAE have secretly teamed up to launch airstrikes against Islamist allied militias battling for control of Tripoli, Libya, 4 senior American officials said. The U.S., the official said, was caught by surprise. Egypt and the Emirates, both close allies and military partners, acted without informing Washington or seeking its consent, leaving the Obama administration on the sidelines. What does that say to you about where America stands in the world right now?
Well, it means that our erstwhile allies, Egypt and the United Arab Emirates, don't trust us anymore. They were afraid that if they told us that the Obama administration would either leak it to the Qataris and the Turks, who would then leak it to the world, or we'd try to stop them. And look, Obama left an utter mess in Libya. The Egyptians live next door. The United Arab Emirates is worried about the rise of Islamist extremism. And what does the Obama administration do? Keeps Egypt at arm's length and cozies up to the Qataris, who are unspeakably duplicitous, to the Turks, who are back the Muslim Brotherhood and who gave free passage through Turkey to the people who became the Islamic State terrorists. And we've got it absolutely upside down. But the bottom line is our allies can't trust us. Our enemies don't fear us. And you can't blame that on Bush.
Ralph, good to see you.